Good morning, y'all. This is the Dynasty Playbook, Dynasty FF's dedicated podcast. I'm your host, Drew. And you can find me on Reddit at EAF_Marine and on Twitter at Drew Dodson NFL. And with me for this final podcast of the regular season is Dave. And you can find Dave on Reddit at mtux96 and on Reddit or on Twitter at DynastyDaveII. Eventually, I'm going to get these introductions nice and smooth and seamless. But until then, Dave, how are you doing this morning?
Pretty well.
Good. You enjoying your nice Christmas season?
So far it's just lovely Christmas season.
Enjoying your nice California weather over there?
It's actually been a little wet this year, so far so good.
Must be nice.
In other places though.
Yeah. It's alright. I'm in the South. I haven't seen snow since I was probably 15. So.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we can go ahead and just get this thing kicked off and start with our week in review. I think our biggest news item for the week is old Dillagaff Jay Cutler got benched. Dave, what were your thoughts when you saw this?
I think that was coming for him. I mean, the Bears this season's just been a mess, and the play hasn't been that well. Very disappointing season, and I guess they just want to try something new over there.
Yeah, I don't think this has as much to do with his play as it does to do with the fact that he has an injury guarantee in his contract for 2016. If he gets injured and if he gets injured, there's a $16 million guarantee in his contract for 2016. Whereas if they cut him before I think it's before the June 1st cutoff of next year, it's only a $3 million guarantee. So I can see wanting to bench him and keep him from getting injured if they're going to cut him. But you're still rolling out with, pickles. Jimmy Clausen is bad. So, I mean, I don't know. I can't really support it. But I've also got Alshon Jeffrey playing, so I'm sad. But if you still own Jay Cutler, I'm not too worried about it because he's still better than half the starting quarterbacks in the league.
And if he doesn't stay with the Bears, he'll probably go somewhere else and play.
Exactly.
But then who's going to be QB as the Bears?
I don't know. It's the same thing about when people talk about, head coaches getting fired. It's like, okay, you're going to fire them, but who are you going to hire that's better than them? And they break that's the main argument people talk about when they talk about firing Coughlin. Like, yeah, okay, he's old, you're going to fire him, but who are you going to bring in? Josh McDaniels? He sucks.
Josh McDaniels probably going to go to the 49ers.
I saw that. I hate the 49ers, and I pray he goes there. That would make me so happy. Bring in Tim Tebow to back up Colin Kaepernick. That's what they need.
Well, maybe they could trade for Manziel and have Manziel and Tebow back there.
Oh my gosh, that would be. Skip Bayless would just have a heart attack. He wouldn't know what to do with himself. Just watch his head pop right there on SportsCenter. All right, let's move on. I think this next one wasn't so much a NFL news, but it was kind of big news for our community, and that's Phenoms FF kind of went down. The owner took a lot of this money that was supposed to be escrowed and invested it in improving the site's functionality to where they could pretty much operate on their own instead of having to draft through ESPN or through MFL or however else they wanted to do it. And they ended up operating way outside of budget, like $400,000 outside of budget, and this is going to end up costing a lot of owners who were operating in Phenoms leagues their prize money. This could cost some owners their deposit money. And I mean, it sucks for these owners that were counting on these prize monies, and it really sucks for these owners that were, rebuilding teams that invested time and energy. And Dave, I mean, did you have any of these Phenoms leagues? Does this affect you at all?
This doesn't affect me at all because I haven't played on Phenoms. I mean, the whole situation is just a giant mess. And I mean, what they were trying to do, I guess, was a good idea. Unfortunately, the way it went down did not go well. I mean, of course, I play on ESPN. I play in MFL. I typically gear towards ESPN because that's what I started with. Um, but it's a lot of these platforms really aren't that. There's plus and minuses to a lot, and there's no really perfect. I think they're just trying to build their own perfect place to play, and it just backfired on them. Ideally, they probably would have been better off just sticking with MFL and deal with paying the leagues there, but I
Oh,
really don't. A lot of people are probably out on their money right now just because of that mess right now.
yeah. Honestly, if Phenoms had been okay with using MFL to continue using their drafting service, then they'd be okay because Phenoms had been doing that for a long time and using them as a way to guarantee the maintenance of their leagues and the security of their leagues. It had operated for a long time. I know a lot of people have used their services in the past and had never had an issue. And that's kind of why this is coming as such a surprise because I mean, I know guys that are like named in the industry that
Yeah.
like stake their names on phenoms, and then this happened, and it's kind of came as a shock because that was kind of like the calling card of phenoms is the stability of your leagues. Because even if you lose an owner, even if you lose a commissioner, it was technically a commissioner because the owner was the commissioner,
Yeah.
the owner of phenoms. But I feel like when it started going over budget, he should have kept people in the loop. He should have said, "Hey, we just went over budget. Um, we're going to extend the process. We're going to make this take longer. Um, so whatever profit they were making, make the process take a couple more years. It didn't have to happen. Clearly, the system they were using was working. So why not make it take 5 years longer instead of trying to make it cost $400,000 more in a year?"
Yeah, they're just trying to fix something that wasn't broken in the first place and try to. I mean, I can see them trying to make improvements, although they should have probably thought more into it. Maybe, like you said, stretch it out a little bit longer. Stay with MFL until they get their system working the correct way in budget, something that they could afford, instead of trying to spend too much to get nothing in return and cause this disheartening situation. Unfortunately, a lot of owners are probably out of money, and even if you go to sue and get a class action suit, I really don't see any of these people getting any money out of a bankrupt company.
Right. Um, and I mean, I can understand them wanting to build their own platform where they don't have to rely on other services to get it done. I get that because it broadens the appeal of their platform. So I'm not going to hold that against them. It's just the way they went about it. That's the problem.
Yeah.
But my biggest thing right now is for those of y'all in these phenoms leagues that are going defunct, get on your league chats, get on your league message boards, get with your league mates, send out messages, send out emails, whatever you have to do. Try and salvage these leagues. Try and transfer them over to MFL. Do your league fees through League Safe, and keep your leagues going. Because I mean, I hate having to start a new league when you've already put so much time and energy into these leagues you already have. Especially if you did a startup like this year, or if you just did a rookie draft this year where you invested a bunch of picks and you're losing out on all these guys you just invested in. What if you do, especially I did it. I spent 3 or 4 first round picks in some of these drafts because I like the players, I like the guys, and say you're losing Cooks, Matthews, Beckham, and Robinson. I'd be pissed. So,
That's
I mean,
what you want
try
to
and
do.
salvage your leagues.
Yeah, definitely get a hold of your league mates and see if you can salvage it. I had issue in my one of my leagues that I'm in, and basically the LM went there, just went with starting going crazy and started vetoing trades left and right. And at one point, he was getting to a point where we had a feeling that he was just going to delete the league. And what we did was we actually copied the league somewhere else, and lo and behold, he deleted the league. But we were able to save the league just by copying it somewhere else and continuing it without him, of course.
There you go. Um, but yeah, I mean,
Always have a backup plan.
exactly. It sucks about the money, but
Yeah.
I would be more upset about losing my team because in Dynasty, it's not about that 1 year. It's about losing that potential to win money all those years down the road if you're good at it, or if you're lucky. Because I
Yeah.
got some league mates that are lucky this year. All right.
Picked up Beckham.
Yep. Beckham carried me to my finals in the 2 leagues I'm in the finals in. What a game for the semifinals. 3 touchdowns. I love it. Praise be to Beckham. Let's go ahead and move on to our player discussion for the week. I decided to go with a couple of guys that are, lower cost, kind of guys you can pick up going into the off season that aren't going to run you very high costs that you can hold on to at the bottom of your roster through the preseason, through the first couple of weeks of the season next year, that have the potential to increase in value, or have the potential to increase in value during the off season because of roster moves, what have you. And the first guy I wanted to talk about was a guy I had a huge man crush on this offseason, and that's Aaron Dobson. Uh, this guy came on hot at the end of last season. This guy was putting up solid wide receiver 2 numbers as a rookie. And he kind of just floundered this year. And it seems completely inconsistent to me, and it makes me believe that the injury that we weren't told about at first has more to do with this than we're being told. Right now, I think you can get Aaron Dobson for a song and a sandwich, and some leagues he's probably sitting on your waiver wire if you're in a shallower league. And I think he's worth going and picking up. This is one of those players I think you're gonna have to wait till probably in season next year for him to start seeing more value, for him to start seeing some targets, some actual play. But I think he has some real potential to see an increase in value, uh, especially if Amendola leaves because he sucks and I hate him. But he's also going to be fighting for time with Brandon LaFell, who's actually looked really good this year, a lot better than I expected him to. But I still have a lot of hope in Aaron Dobson. And Dave, I'm interested to see if you have any thoughts on him.
Yeah, he'll be an intriguing prospect to add to your bench. At this point, if you get him cheap, that's great. I mean, looking at the bottom of your roster, is there anyone really better than him? That's what you're going to be looking at. And if not, just grab him. Just hold on to just see what happens. Um, a lot of times, those bottom wide receivers who end up helping you in the season, especially when your big ones are out on injury, out on bye. You might want to look into him. Maybe he's going to turn into some star with Brady and the Patriots there.
Right. I think we'll go ahead and knock out the wide receivers first. Another guy I wanted to go to is rookie this year, and he's probably one of like the 2 rookies that didn't see a giant increase in value, and that's Josh Huff. It's the guy that Chip Kelly coached in Oregon, and he drafted to his team with the Eagles. Uh, he's not a big-bodied wide receiver, and I think, but he is a very good player. I think Chip Kelly really has a plan for how he wants to utilize him, and I think he's going to see more use in the offense as he adapts to the game in the NFL. and as kind of the depth chart clears ahead of him. It's going to clear up really quick if they don't re-sign Jeremy Maclin, which they could, they might, who knows. I think that they're probably leaning towards they will, but if he wants a lot of money, they might not. Also, they might just go ahead and get rid of Riley Hard R. Cooper, because he kind of sucks. Outside of pass blocking, he's really just terrible. He's dropped a ton of key passes this year, and I could see him passing him up as well. So I could see Josh Huff seeing a large increase in value, either in the off season because Maclin or Cooper goes. Cooper probably won't go. Cooper would probably have to just get dropped on the depth chart. But if Maclin goes somewhere else, Huff automatically jumps on the depth chart. But if Cooper gets jumped, then Huff sees more playing time during the season. I don't know if you know anything about Huff, if you watched him before he came into the NFL. Any thoughts?
Not really on Huff. Although I think you're right, he probably will depend on the depth chart and if Macklin leaves or not. I have a feeling he probably will pass up Cooper, but I think he's still going to depend if Macklin leaves. You still have Jordan Matthews there. I think he's going to be the true number one there once Macklin does leave, which I'm hoping Macklin does leave, being a Jordan Matthews owner. That will open up him, and hopefully he doesn't have any more goose eggs, especially this week. But
Amen.
But I think we can move on to the next player. I would like to actually mention one in the same gist of players you could probably get for cheap that might have a future, hopefully. I'd like to bring up Stedman Bailey, who really started out slow this year. He was actually on the waiver wire for quite a long time in my league, and I actually dropped him a couple times and still picked him back up. I think Stedman Bailey is a promising star moving forward, especially if the Rams get their QB in check. He started out slow. He started out with the suspension, of course, and he still started out slow until they work him into the game. And lately, he's been actually putting up some pretty decent numbers here and there too.
Yeah, I like Bailey. I think Bailey's got some real potential and some real talent, and I've kind of been going back and forth because I also like Brian Quick a lot, and it's been hard for me to pick who the one wide receiver I'd want out of that offense is. But when it comes down to it, I kind of want to have both, just so I make sure I had whoever the emergent wide receiver is in that offense. But I think Quick is going to end up costing you. Whereas Bailey, you could probably get a little bit cheaper.
And that's
if you have Quick, I'm absolutely going out and getting Bailey for whatever I can get him for. But I do like Bailey. I think he has a good chance to produce in the future, especially if he has good quarterback play behind him. At least better than what he has now.
I think that's a lot of it with Bailey is you get him cheap. A lot of people really kind of ignore him. They kind of don't think about it. He's like it's just a second thought. A lot of people think Rams. They think Quick. They think Austin, who's not going to do much anyways. But it's just that with Bailey, he's just kind of one of those ignored players on that team, which he's last few weeks he's actually been pretty decent, at least double digits here and there, in my leagues anyways. And I just have him on my bench. Well, actually, I'm actually starting since Hopkins is probably not going to play this week, but I might actually change that. But the key with Bailey is you get him for cheap and have him on your bench and see what happens next year with the Rams there.
Right, and I think you bring up a really interesting point there about they look at him as they don't look at him as part of the Rams offense. I think a bigger key to that is people overlook him because it's the Rams offense. I don't think people want any part of that passing game. And I think that causes a lot of players that are more talented than we realize to be overlooked. Players like Andre Holmes in the Oakland offense. I think Andre Holmes is another one of those guys you can buy cheaply. I didn't even actually have him on my list, but that's another one of those guys that's in a completely just underperforming offense that could see a jump in production next year, and he could be a beneficiary of that. Granted, the other guys we've brought up are kind of already in these nice offenses. Aaron Dobson and Josh Huff are obviously in some of the better offenses in the NFL. But Stedman Bailey, Andre Holmes, these are poor offenses. But when you think of these offenses, you got to look at the numbers instead of just kind of thinking about what your perception of them is. Because I think you'd be surprised more often than not how good the numbers are. Like, Oakland puts up some nice passing numbers, but they don't have the touchdown production. I think once the touchdowns start coming, they're gonna produce some fantasy viable wide receivers, especially if they draft Amari Cooper. That'll make David Carr or Derek Carr, excuse me.
Wrong Carr.
Oh, sorry about that, Texans fans. I'm sorry for the bring back the bad memories. I actually saw a kid with a David Carr jersey who looked like he wasn't old enough to know who that was. But back to what we were talking about. Look at those offenses and look at the numbers subjectively. Or that's the right word, right? I'm not having a good. Objectively.
Objectively?
Objectively. Subjectively. That wasn't the right word.
No, it wasn't.
I shouldn't use words I don't know what they mean. That's not good. Oh.
Look at things objectively.
Exactly. I know words. I should know what they mean.
Objectively, subjectively, they kind of sound alike, so.
Yeah, they got adjectivelies in them. But another guy I wanted to bring up was Nick Toon, who there's a number of Dynasty podcasts I listen to, and I think all of them have one resident Nick Toon fanboy. And I'll go ahead and throw my hat into the ring on this one. I like Nick Toon, kinda. He's kind of the only big body wide receiver we have outside of Colston right now, and I think if he continues to develop and look way better than he did in the preseason, then he could see some continued play. Nick Toon has been available on the waiver wire in almost all of my leagues, and I think he's worth a pickup. He's seen increased usage in this second half of the season, and if Colston continues to degrade in production, then he could continue to see increased usage. He's not going to cost you anything to pick up, most likely, so why not? Just take a chance. Do you have any opinions on Nick Toon besides his awesome name?
I really don't watch much Nick Toon. I am more of a HBO fan, but
That's horrible.
Yes, it was.
You have children. How do you not watch Nick?
I don't have cable.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah, well, for your suggestion, I'm actually picking up Nick Toon as we speak right now, actually. I'm going to actually drop Kirk Cousins for him.
Why are you still holding Kirk Cousins?
Actually, I just re-picked up Kirk Cousins after dropping him last week. Mainly because I only have one QB on my roster right now.
Oh, well.
But
I feel like I'd have rather picked up Jimmy Clausen than Kirk Cousins.
Well, I'm thinking ahead. But I'll probably end up picking up QB in the draft.
Yeah.
As far as Nick Toon goes, this guy, he's worked up pretty much coming into the league. I think he has some relation to Mr. Al Toon, which was starting the NFL. And It's all about
Alton is his
bloodlines.
father.
And who?
That's his father.
Yeah. Sometimes it's all about bloodlines, and I think is an intriguing prospect. And like you suggested, I actually picked him up just now, and he was sitting in my waiver wire in my league. So um, beyond that, I haven't really watched much of him. He hasn't really produced enough for me to notice, I guess, and I guess nor has anyone else. The Saints' offense kind of scares me, and how they spread the ball around. That's the one bad part there. Um, but you never really know how that's going to change in the coming years either.
Right. Well, also, I mean, if he takes that role that Colston has and he has had in the past, uh, Colston had a good rapport with Drew Brees. If Nick
Yeah.
Toon can establish that, Colston consistently, in 7 seasons, I want to say it was 7 out of 8 seasons or something like that, he put up 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns in 7 out of his 8 seasons.
Hmm.
So I mean, it's not great, but that's consistent.
Colston is the basically the consistent fantasy football wide receiver. He's just one of those players a lot of people just picked up just because he has consistency. But how much longer is Colston going to be in the league? As a Saints fan, you should probably know more than on this than anyone else. So
Well,
when
he might not be a Saint next year.
yeah, so when you say pick up
He's,
Nick Toon, I think people should probably start picking up Nick Toon.
and I'm thinking I'm gonna go ahead and throw out my last cheap guy to pick up, and that's gonna be my last guy, unless you have somebody else you want to throw out there.
Yeah, that's it for me.
All right, I had a couple saved up this week, so I was ready to go. My last guy's a running back. This is a guy I liked a lot going into the season. I had him picked up before he started making awesome one-handed catches every game, and that's Theo Riddick. He got a lot of hype going into the preseason. Then he didn't really produce anything. A lot of people dropped him back and forgot about him. I think he's the best pass-catching running back on the Lions roster right now, and I think he could see a lot of play in that offense next year. You could probably pick him up real cheap as well if Joique Bell continues to suck as he has. He's done very poorly, in my opinion. If there are any Lions fans out there, feel free to correct me. But from what I've seen, Joique Bell has sucked this year. I think Theo Riddick could see a lot of work, and as long as they use him even moderately, that's going to translate, especially if you're in PPR leagues. He's easy to stash. I've got him on a good few of my rosters, and I mean, why not? I think that's my reasoning for most of these guys is why not.
If you get a player cheap that has promising, that's kind of what makes your team sometimes, and especially in Dynasty, you need to build around that, especially on your bottom of your roster. Find those stars that are going to be stars in the future, or even some consistent players. That's the way you win sometimes, is just picking up these stars and gems and build them up. Of course, at some time you might actually drop them for better ones, but just kind of hold on to them just to see what they turn out to be. You're not really in it for this year. Sometimes just pick up the little, like those ones that are intriguing for you and see what they turn out to be.
Right, and I mean, you're not going to hit on all of them. That's never the point. It's turning those roster spots and trying to turn them into something. If you make it happen 1 out of 50 times, then you got one stud that you wouldn't have got otherwise. Your team gets stronger. These are the players, I talked before about dropping kickers and defenses. These are the kind of players I'm dropping those kickers and defenses for. These are the players that have the potential to make your team better. Because for every stud that, your team's better because you have them, it's also, another way to measure the strength of your team is through depth. If you have an injury to 2 players on your starting lineup and then you can't field the starting lineup anymore, then your team wasn't that strong, in my opinion. So depth is important too. And this is how you build depth. If these guys develop into startable wide receiver 2s, that's pretty strong depth, in my opinion. You got anything else you want to touch on before we move on?
I think it's time to move on.
All right. Let's go ahead and move on to our college player discussion of the week. And we're going to do our first non-senior of the year because draft declarations have started. And I decided to go with our first guy who I thought would be an interesting guy to start with because he's a slash player, and that's Devin Funchess. He's a junior out of Michigan, and he is a wide receiver slash tight end. He declared for the draft this past week. The reason he's listed as a wide receiver slash tight end is because for his first couple years in Michigan he plays a tight end. Then this year he plays a wide receiver. So he could still, declare as either. I mean, he could still, be drafted as either. But he could also still play as either. Like Tree Archer was drafted as a wide receiver and then ended up signing up as a running back, or ended up being listed on the depth chart as a running back. But Dave, I want to hear your initial impressions. What did you think?
I think a lot of his value is going to be what position does he play. If he comes in as a tight end, I think it holds more value than, say, a wide receiver. I think matchup. I think he's going to be another clone of like a Jimmy Graham kind of catching the ball tight end. The few games I did see, I really didn't see much of him in the wide receiver slot. A lot of plays I've seen he was either basically tight end going against a safety or linebacker. I think his value does hold with the tight end. I really don't see him as a wide receiver though.
Gotcha. In terms of his play, I mean, what did you see that you liked?
I
what did you see
liked
that you didn't like?
I liked how he came out of the field. I liked his routes, and that he could actually jump and catch the ball. So I think he's going to have a lot of value in the tight end slot if he actually does play tight end. I know he's probably going to want to come out as wide receiver just due to the money, just because wide receivers tend to make more money than tight ends. But I really don't. I see more as a tight end prospect more than anything.
I agree and disagree, and it's going to take me a second to explain why. I think he's going to have more value as a tight end because this crop of tight ends in this class is there's not really one. I guess we have a visitor. What's up? There's not really anyone else at the tight end position this year, so that guarantees him getting drafted earlier than he would as a wide receiver. The comparison to Jimmy Graham, though he doesn't play at that same level, I'm not going to go ahead and say he's going to be Jimmy Graham. He's not used as a blocking tight end. You'll find very few plays of him engaging defensive players as a blocker. But he does, he plays in a very similar manner. He's used in a similar manner.
Gronk.
Right.
Gronk.
Right. Gronk will engage a defender and love it just as much as he's scoring a touchdown. Gronk loves contact, whereas Jimmy is not a fan of blocking. And I also agree with you. I saw a lot of things I liked at him in his play. He's very good at high pointing the ball. I did see a lot of things I liked out of him in terms of how he runs his routes. His comebacks are very sharp. His footwork is very clean. Not a lot of wasted steps. His big issues are he has some drops, but part of that is difficult to evaluate because he had some questionable QB play, especially in terms of accuracy. His last year in 2013, made it a little more difficult to evaluate. Um, if he does come out as a tight end, I'm not drafting him. Though I do think he will be a good player as a tight end. But just like Eric Ebron, just like ASJ, these are guys that are going to cost less in this offseason than they did last offseason because tight end takes longer to develop. I can trade for him cheaper than I could draft him. So I'm not going to draft him. I'd rather spend the capital and draft a wide receiver that's going to appreciate in value and trade for him after his rookie season when people are not as high on him. If he comes out as a wide receiver, I'm going to draft him because I think he has the potential to play very well in the NFL. If they can work on his pass catching a little bit, I mean, you've seen him make some very good catches, so the ability is there. Then I think he can really do well in the NFL. But I do agree that he probably holds more value to the NFL as a tight end.
And I think teams are going to draft him. They might draft him as a wide receiver, but I have a feeling they're going to play him more like a tight end now.
Right.
Because I think they're going to try to mismatch him with those safeties and those linebackers. And he might come out as a wide receiver. He might be drafted as a wide receiver, but I think the key is how our team's going to play him. Are they going to try to match him up with those safeties and linebackers coming out as a tight end slot, or even maybe just run him as a slot receiver maybe? But it all depends on the team that drafts him and how they play him.
Right.
And at this point, you really don't know until after he's drafted and until the preseason, which I'm probably not spending a high draft pick. Maybe I might actually do what you say and maybe trade for him later on when you actually trade cheaper than you can actually draft him.
Right. And it'll if he gets drafted in the first round as a tight end, it'll be Eric Ebron all over again. I saw people spending the 105 pick, 104 pick on Eric Ebron, and that to me is a waste of a pick.
Yeah.
Because Eric Ebron, you'd be lucky to get a late first for Eric Ebron, or better than a late first for Eric Ebron right now.
Tight end position's kind of one of those odd positions, and everyone's trying to catch up to the owners that have Jimmy Graham and the Gronks. They want to find the next gem, but they're not patient enough to hold on to those gems. And next thing you know, Ebron could actually turn into a Graham type tight end. He's just not developed yet, and that's just takes time. And people will probably sell them cheap when they don't produce. They kind of want production now. They're like, what did you do for me lately kind of mentality.
Exactly. And I mean, and this is coming from a guy who drafted plenty of shares of ASJ, and even I regret it. I mean, well, that was also because I drafted him over, Dante Moncrief and some Trey Mason and Jeremy Hill and, a couple others. But I still believe in his talent. I'm not trading him away. But I wish I had spent that draft capital on those players that gained value. I saw things I liked from ASJ this year, so I don't feel like I wasted that capital completely. But I feel like I could have spent it better. I could have used it more wisely.
Yeah.
So I think tight end is a position I won't be drafting, especially early in the future.
I mean, I typically avoid tight ends, and I typically lucked out by picking up those Jordan Reeds and the Donalds, and that's the way I view the tight ends. Like, I mean, unless you have the Gronk or the Graham, you're basically sliding in tight ends week to week, and you're going to eventually, hopefully, land a gem. But I really don't think they really make your team. If you build your team right, get decent running backs and wide receivers, and then look at the tight end position, and hope you find a good tight end. But if you have Graham and Gronk, you're probably set.
Yeah.
Beyond that is a crapshoot, especially this year.
Yeah, I mean, even if you had Graham this year, it's kind of a crapshoot. Graham and JT both kind of screwed you, but what are you gonna do?
Build your team wide receiving running back and build from there.
Yeah. Um, but there was a lot I liked at Devin Funch's game. Going back to him, uh, watching him play as a wide receiver. There wasn't a whole lot of tape available. There was the one game against Notre Dame, and he played well against the corners. Which was a good sign to me. He played well in tight coverage. Um, not as well as he did against safeties and linebackers in that tight coverage, but I think that's something that as he continues to play against them, that's something he will be able to improve on. Because he did show the ability to do it at some level already. And I think we can go ahead and move on. And I can say if he comes out as a wide receiver, he'll probably be on my team. Well, maybe. He's a guy I'd be willing to draft.
What price would you be drafting him at, though?
That's
the key.
Right. He's probably in my 106 to 109 range. Probably after I'm taking him after Cooper. In terms of wide receivers, Cooper, Parker, White, yeah, he's probably about my 105 to 108 range then. Depending on what we see at the combine, if he runs with decent speed, if he doesn't show up slow, then I mean I don't need to see 4.4 speed out of him. But if he shows up slow, then that'll be a concern. But yeah, about 105 to 108, I think is a decent spot for him.
Even with all the running backs in this draft.
Yeah. That is if he comes out as a wide receiver. But I'm not the only running back that I'd probably draft in the top 5 are probably Gordon and Gurley, and Gordon would be after Cooper and Parker and White. Probably, but I'm also not so high on Gordon because of the whole pass catching thing. You know, all my running backs be able to catch the ball. That's all right though, because when he blows up and I look stupid, y'all can send me hate mail. But when I'm right, I'm just gonna sit here and be right by myself. But regardless, I think we can go ahead and move on to our submitted questions for the week. We got a good couple of submissions this week, and we need to go ahead and move on with those. So, our first one is from Rodriguez. Yeah, sure.
Rodriguez Re.
I think he misspelled it when he made the name.
It's probably some inside joke of his, maybe.
Who knows? Where do you see some of the upcoming free agents signing? The first one is Stephen Ridley. Now these are obviously hard to predict, but these are also coming before the draft, so these are teams that are going to be filling obviously pretty clear needs. I think Stephen Ridley would be a good fit somewhere like Atlanta, where they're going to need kind of more of a power runner and someone who's not going to need to catch the ball as well, considering they have some backs there that are able to catch. I think Stephen Ridley would be a good fit there. Where's somewhere you think, besides Atlanta, where else would Stephen Ridley probably be a good fit?
I think maybe look at the AFC East teams. Maybe the Jets pick him up, or the I can see him maybe even going south to Miami sometimes. Just because they see him twice a year, and they might say, "Oh, he's a free agent. Let's pick him up," which oftentimes that doesn't actually work out that well. But I could see maybe them making a play for him.
I could see him with the Jets. Yeah, especially if they fire Chris Johnson. Have a nice 1-2 punch between him and Chris Ivory, which is kind of dangerous though, because both of them are bad at catching the ball. Though Chris Ivory's gotten better at this year, way better than he was when he was in New Orleans. I think we'll go ahead and next one he wants to know about is C.J. Spiller. No, I think C.J. Spiller would be a much better fit. Probably somewhere. This was one of those guys we talked about last week.
Yeah.
Um.
I think you said Miami, didn't you?
No, I think I said Detroit.
Detroit. Yeah, you
And
did.
see if he would supplant Theo Riddick and if Reggie Bush left. But I'm trying to stick on my Theo Riddick is going to be good next year mantra because I like Theo Riddick.
And you own Theo Riddick in a few leagues, I'm guessing too.
Yeah, I got him in a couple. Spiller would probably be good. I don't know. I don't like CJ Spiller, so let's let Dave go first, and I'll try and think of one.
Let's see, where is CJ Spiller gonna go? Who needs a running back, and who's not gonna draft one?
Oh, how about Jacksonville? Give them a nice pass catching back.
Who do they have, like Fozzie Whitaker?
Oh, they got Toby Gerhart. He's good-ish. Ish. I actually changed my mind about Stephen Ridley. I think his best fit would be with the Colts.
Colts?
Yeah. I'd like to see him there, so that way all my Trent Richardson shares are at least made better by the fact that my Stephen Ridley shares become good. So many wasted Trent Richardson shares. I don't even want to think about it.
Next year.
Anywhere else do you think CJ? What's that?
Next year's Trent's year. Next year.
Yeah, next year. Next year, Trent. It will be Trent's year to retire.
Anywhere else? Who really needs a running back? Jacksonville.
Tennessee, but I don't know that he's necessarily a good fit there.
Yeah.
Tennessee needs a running back because Bishop Sankey is terrible.
How's Carolina?
They can't afford him. They're spending like a quarter of their cap money on 3 running backs, and they can't cut their 2 most expensive ones because the dead money would be more than the money they're paying them next season. Their GM screwed them so hard. Like it's bad when an in-division rival feels bad for your team. That's not good.
Let's see here. This year for free agent running backs is going to be tough with the draft coming up with all those good running backs in there. Not saying that good running backs in the draft are actually going to come out of the NFL, but it's going to be hard to say where they're going.
Yeah.
Randall Cobb next on the list, which is more intriguing because, like we've said in the past, I really don't think he succeeds outside of Green Bay unless he goes to like a New England or maybe even a New Orleans, maybe somewhere they could actually use him properly.
New Orleans. Not New Orleans. New Orleans.
New Orleans.
New Orleans. I hear the broadcasters say it all the time. It drives me crazy. This is the only time I've ever got to correct anybody, so I'm going to take the opportunity. Yeah. I think New England is a good fit. Maybe Carolina, but Carolina can't afford him. Like I said, I think I thought Seattle might be an interesting fit for him, just because they have a poor receiving core.
But with Randall Cobb, I think he's probably going to end up in some place just to be the number 1 wide receiver, and I think he's going to fall flat on his face.
Right. Somewhere like Kansas City.
But I think he's going to go somewhere trying to be the number one wide receiver, and it's just not going to work out because it doesn't fit his tool set.
Right. I agree. And we'll go ahead and we'll move on to Rodriguez last question, and is also, do you ever see Rob Hauser getting out of Arizona and getting on a team that would know how to utilize him? And my answer to that is yes. Rob Hauser's contract is over at the end of the season, and he's going to be a free agent. Finally. I've held on to Rob Hauser in a couple of leagues. I like his talent, and I've kind of been waiting for Arizona to use him right, and they never have. I like his talent. I think he's one of those guys that metric evaluators like a lot, and I think he's definitely worth going out and holding on to through the off season if you've got the space for him, just because he's one of those guys that's probably on the waiver wire. If he goes somewhere to a team that can utilize him halfway correctly, that's a potential tight end win with how screwy the position is right now.
Hypothetically, let's say Arizona somehow winds up in the Super Bowl, and somehow they manage to actually find a way to use Hausler correctly, and actually he goes on to win them the Super Bowl. Do you see them re-signing him at that point, or do you think that he still moves on?
He still moves on, because I think that just means he gets a bigger contract, and that's more of a reason for them to not re-sign him. Yeah. No, I don't think so. Arians has never been huge on using his tight ends.
I think another team's going to look for that Jimmy Graham, Jordan Cameron kind of pass-catching wide receiving tight end, and I think he will find a new home as well.
Yeah.
Especially with Arizona not utilizing him correctly, and I don't think Arizona's going to really need him. Basically, they probably have other needs to fill other than a tight end that they're not using.
Right. Plus, they just picked up Troy Nicholas, who's clearly a guy that they like more right now. Otherwise, they wouldn't have waited such a high pick on him. And I think we can go ahead and move on to our next question. It's from You Know Me Too.
Yeah.
And this question is, what do you see for Ebron and Eifert next year? Is Eifert just too much of an injury risk? And is Ebron developing enough to be a weapon next year? I guess we'll start off with the Eifert question. What do you think about Eifert? You get to watch him twice a year. Well, once this year.
Once. Injury. I really don't pay a lot of attention to the tight ends. My position on tight ends is they're always second thought for me in fantasy. I think with a lot of these pass-catching tight ends, they tend to be these injury risks. I mean, look at Jordan Reed, look at Jordan Cameron, injury, and I think when you get to that point, I think you're looking at injury risk people to begin with. Eifert, a few times I did see him. I think I've heard his name a few times. I think he's a tight end you probably want to have, but you probably do want to have another tight end to actually back him up with any of these tight ends. You should have a backup anyways. A lot of these pass catching ones are injury, just because what they're made to do in the NFL. They're basically going over the middle. I really don't think there's more of injury risk as the fact that they're basically required to take those hits, and that's what's getting them injured more than any other position.
Eifert to me is not too much of an injury risk. This injury was kind of more of a freak injury. It's not one that proves to be a recurring type of injury, not one where it's not concussion problems like Jordan Reed has and Jordan Cameron has. It's not like, what's that?
Is this one of those injuries that a tight end is going to get just by being hit hard, and any player could really suffer that?
Exactly. To me, he has no more of an injury risk than any other football player. So that's not turning me off from him at all. Eifert was one of my higher ranked tight ends for the year. I think he was my number 5 or 6 tight ends coming into this offseason, so he was fairly high ranked for me. And that's not going to change much going into this year, especially that Jermaine Gresham is going to be a free agent after this year. Eifert, to me, is going to be the number 2 next to A.J. Green before Marvin Jones or Mohamed Sanu. So Eifert, to me, is the guy I'm definitely... What's that?
Healthy Cameron.
Yeah. Eifert, to me, is one of those guys that he's definitely on my shopping list for this offseason. Because I think people are going to be a little turned off that they didn't see anything from him this season. So I'm going to be able to pick him up at a discount. I think we're going to see a big year from him production-wise next year. And he's definitely worth picking up. There was a reason he was a first-round pick.
Yeah.
As for Ebron, I haven't got to watch a whole bunch of Ebron, but from what I have, I wasn't really impressed. Besides the Thanksgiving game, he hasn't shown us a whole lot of anything this year.
He's still kind of developing. I mean, he's just a rookie. I mean, it's just these tight ends just take longer to develop than, say, a wide receiver rookie or a running back rookie.
Well, absolutely, yeah. Tight end still takes 2 or 3 years to develop in the NFL. So I'm not giving up on Ebron, but I haven't seen enough for me to believe he's going to be useful next year. He's going to be a startable tight end next year. And I absolutely haven't seen enough for me to want to go out and try and get him on my team. I did not believe in him enough to draft him or consider drafting him, and I haven't seen anything that changes that opinion for me.
He was just too expensive this year in the rookie drafts, going 1.5 really, 1.6.
Yeah.
That's just too early for a tight end. But then again, you're talking to me, who I think tight ends is the second thought in fantasy football. I really don't look for them unless somehow Graham or Gronk falls on my lap for extremely cheap. I don't go after them too much. I actually traded Cameron in the beginning of this year for 2 first-round picks, and that seems working out well for me this time. But I still have Reed, which has been an injury, and I picked up Donald. Tight ends, it's just a matter of just finding a gem on the waiver wire for me, and that seems to be working out fine for me. It's just tight ends, they tend to be too expensive because everyone's chasing after the Graham, they're chasing after their Gronk, and they want to find the next tight end that's going to be Graham or Gronk level. And I think maybe out of those two, I think you're probably right on Eifert. Eifert's probably the one you want to grab out of those two. Ebron still has a chance. He's still developing, though.
Right. Yeah. If you own Ebron, you obviously paid a premium to get him, and I'm not selling him right now. I'd wait and see if he develops. Because even in startup drafts, he was going in the 5th, 6th, 7th round. That's a premium pick. So I'm holding on to him. I'm holding on to him and hoping he develops. Hoping he develops into something better than what Brandon Pettigrew developed into. But I'm not going out and buying him. I think we can move on to our next question, which is from Lucifer X88, who's a guy we've gotten. He's a frequent submitter of questions, and we always like hearing from him. I know it's probably difficult to answer since both of these players figure to be starters on different teams next year. But would you rather own RG3 or Jay Cutler? And for me, this is pretty easy to answer. What about you, Dave?
Jay Cutler, RG3. I'd probably look at more Jay Cutler just for consistency's sake. RG3 probably has a higher ceiling if he actually gets his act together and falls to a team, or maybe stays on a team that actually utilizes him correctly and he learns how to slide and stays uninjured. But I think for consistency's sake, I'll probably look at Jay Cutler.
Yeah, it's Jay Cutler for me, and it's not even close. Jay Cutler is easily in the top half of running backs, in the top half of quarterbacks in the league. And RG3 got benched for Colt McCoy. I think that says all you need to know. Granted, Jay Cutler just got benched for Jimmy Clausen, but Jay Cutler got benched because he has an injury guarantee, and RG3 got benched because he sucks. Granted, he also looks a lot better. He looked a lot better when he got on the field this last week. But I think Jay Cutler's ceiling is higher. Even when he throws picks, he still puts up yards. He still manages to throw 2 or 3 touchdowns. And I think if the ownership, or not the ownership, but the front office and the coaching staff changes in Chicago, I don't know that Jay Cutler is gone next year. I think Jay Cutler could still be a Bear next year, and I think it's probably more likely to occur than people realize, just because of how much he costs to keep there. You know, he's got quite a hefty contract, and if you get rid of him, like we talked about earlier, who are you replacing him with? Really, are you gonna go out and get Christian Ponder in free agency or Jake Locker? You're not going to have a high enough draft pick. Well, they might have a high enough draft pick to pick up Marcus Mariota, but then what do? Gamble in that you might get somebody as good as Jay Cutler?
Who are they going to pick up? Brian Hoyer?
Yeah, there you go. Then you can get 180 yards passing and 2 interceptions a game. Good call. But yeah, for me, it's Jay Cutler, and it's not even close. At one point this season, when I was revising my rankings, I had RG3 at my quarterback 40, and I mean, it's just RG3 could be out of the league within the next couple of years at this pace.
RG3 is one of those risk picks, and you kind of hope it turns into something, but chances are you probably won't. But if you want to take a gamble, then RG3 is your pick.
Right.
He still needs to learn how to slide, and he still hasn't managed to do that right.
And that's the thing. He's good at throwing the ball. If he had more of that Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers mentality, where he can run around, but if he keeps his eyes downfield, trying to make that pass until the moment he can't, and then takes off, he'd probably be a better quarterback. He'd probably be a much better quarterback. But
yeah, the mentality to run rather than run around and look for the pass kind of mentality.
Right. He's not extending the play. He's just running.
He's trying to make the play.
Right. I think that's the same problem Manziel's going to have.
Well, we'll see how that comes out this week against Carolina.
Yeah, I didn't even put that on the list because I didn't want to make you cry on the podcast. That was so bad.
That whole game was a mess. And a lot of people are putting on Manziel, but a lot of it's the whole team. That was a complete implosion there.
Yeah. That was terrible. A terrible coaching decision to try and throw, read option plays in there, a week before the game. Just make them plays.
They should have just kept with the same playbook they played all year. I think that would have been a more successful game for them.
Exactly, and then just allowed.
They do the same rollouts that they're doing with Hoyer. I think Manziel will excel in that as well, and it's kind of hard to throw when you have a defender right in the backfield right when you snap the ball. I mean, I think the Bengals even sacked Manziel during a handoff exchange.
Yeah.
How often do you see that? Person handing off to a running back and the guy is sacked before they get even handed off.
Yeah, that's they absolutely shouldn't have put the read option in there. They should have just ran with the same playbook and given Johnny the opportunity to run if he got flushed out.
Yeah, and
I feel like that would have been a much more successful game plan.
Hopefully this week against Carolina they actually run the same plays that they did all year up until last week.
Hopefully they just beat the brakes off of Carolina, so that way it's a little easier for us to win the division.
Anyways, moving on.
Yeah. And our last question is from Curry Recca. I'm going to go ahead and assume I said that wrong. Perhaps we could do a segment breaking down the mock drafts happening here and where you think each rookie should land for next year. Well, we're running a little over on time, so I think it would just be good for us right now to do kind of just looking at the drafts and seeing where the players are being drafted in the mock, and in the future we could probably look at where these players should go in the actual NFL. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we're already running about an hour and we've still got a little bit to go. And let me pull up that mock real quick with it.
Okay. You want to just discuss the top 5 here?
Yeah, I feel like it's short enough to where we can go ahead and pull up the whole thing. I think we're only like 14 picks in. I think the beginning of it's fairly standard, anyways.
Yeah.
First picks are Cooper and Gurley, which I'm starting to feel like Cooper's gonna end up being the number 1 overall pick more times than not, just because of the wide receiver bias right now, because they're so highly valued, and I don't see anything wrong with that.
No.
I
don't think you could go wrong with Cooper at 1.
You got Gurley and Gordon, top 2 running backs. I don't think anybody's going to disagree with that. My first shock of the draft was Carlos Williams at 104. This guy is like a 3rd round pick in my opinion. I mean, even if you like the guy, take him in the 2nd round. So to me, that was a rough pick. I don't know what you think.
Early, yeah, I think that was way too early, especially with the other running backs still on the board and the other wide receivers for that matter as well. I mean, you have White there, you have Parker there.
I mean, I'd take Mariota over him.
And Mariota is still on the board as well.
Yep.
I think you'd still. I mean, if you really need a running back that much, I think you'd be looking at the Coleman or the Abdullah, who we talked about earlier this season.
Yep. Like I said, Coleman went at 105. He's kind of gone all over the board from some of the mocks I've seen, and he's a guy that I still need to look at more closely. But
I saw this name on the draft on this. I actually like him. He actually looks promising. I kind of like the way that he runs.
I mean, I haven't seen enough to say that this is a good or a bad pick, but from the responses, it looks like he could fit in just fine here. So I got nothing bad to say about it. 106 is Kevin White, wide receiver out of West Virginia. This is a guy I like a lot. This is my 2nd wide receiver in the class, and probably a guy I'd be willing to take it 103. I like him a lot. Any thoughts on Kevin White?
I haven't really looked into him too much.
Yeah, this was his first season playing Division I. He played a lot of community college, but he slipped right in. He's kind of just torn it up. If you want to get a good look at him, he should be playing in the Senior Bowl this year too. So, 107 Devontae Parker. That's pretty good value for him right there. 108 TJ Yeldon. This is a guy, seen him a bunch. Watched him play in the SEC. Nothing to blow you away with, but he's solid. He's going to do everything you need him to do. So I'll take that at 108. You got Jalen Strong at 109. Any thoughts there?
No.
No.
I still haven't really researched a lot of these rookies.
Gotcha.
No real big surprise except the only surprise like I seen on this one was the 104 pick.
Yeah. That one.
These are names you're probably gonna find in these slots anyways. I hear a lot of good things. Number 10 was Darrell Green Beckham.
Yep.
Might be a risky pick.
Yeah, that's definitely a risk pick, but it's a high upside pick. So I get that one.
that might actually work out for him, especially like the other wide receiver with Beckham his name did this year.
Yeah. Yeah, this guy is one of those guys that that's one of those risk reward picks. But if you're taking him at the end of the first round, you're already a playoff team. So
Yeah,
this is one of those picks that can make your team a lot stronger.
yeah.
Um,
Number 11 was Maridola, who we focused on one of our first podcasts.
I think that's going to end up being solid value for him there.
Especially 11, I think that's a really good pick there.
Yeah, especially with the kind of craziness that's been going on at the running back position lately. Then boy, we just did today. Devin Funchess at 112. The drafter listed him purely as a wide receiver, and I think if that's the case, then that's a pretty good value for him. But like I said, if he's listed as a tight end, then excuse me. If he's listed at 112, I think if he's listed as tight end, then 112 is not bad for him.
Yeah. My one fear about him is he might come out as a wide receiver, but it really depends on how they use him. But if he comes out as a wide receiver and they use him as tight end and he succeeds, that 112 pick's going to look genius. But I think a lot of teams are probably going to work him as a tight end.
Right.
Which is probably going to suit his skill set better anyways.
Right. 201.
Points as a wide receiver in the tight end slot, though.
Yeah. 201 was my pick. I picked Jay Ajayi out of Boise State, a running back. Haven't watched a ton on him, but he's got good size and speed. He's very capable pass catcher.
And
I think
running back, you're looking to hit on those gems that people overpass anyways.
Right. This guy might not be a workhorse running back, but I think he'll be able to have enough value as a committee back to take and actually be able to use. And the only other pick in the mock was Marcus Mariota at 202. I think Mariota is easily going to be the best quarterback out of this draft, but I still think 202 is a little high for quarterback in this mock, or just in this draft in general.
Yeah, people in this draft, it's not a really QB draft at all. You have Mariota, and that other guy from Florida State.
Yeah, I'm not touching Winston.
Yeah, and you have Winston and Mariota, and that's the only two QBs that's even kind of worth discussing right now. And Mariota's really depending where he's going to be at, and is he actually going to succeed in the NFL? It's kind of a interesting year for QBs in this draft class.
Yeah.
In fact, there's really not a lot there. And I think this one is basically going to be running backs and wide receivers.
Pretty much.
Mainly running backs, I think, for this year. Like last year was wide receivers. And this year I have Gurley and Gordon.
There's still a good few wide receivers in this class I like as well.
Yeah.
I think we can go ahead and move on to our next section, and that's our strategy questions for the week, and that's looking ahead to the 2016 draft class. This is a topic you wanted to bring up, and I guess
mainly the reason why I want to pick this up is basically now you're probably moving on to the off season. You're looking to trade draft picks. You're probably looking to trade for futures. And this is something you will kind of want to discuss as well, and something that you want to look into is like, okay, I'm trading away 2016s or I'm trading for 2016s. Is that a good idea? That depends on how you view the draft class, and that's something you want to look into. Who's coming out in 2016 that's worth getting, or maybe you don't like anyone in 2016. You really want to have those draft picks. And if you don't see anyone in there, trade away your 2016 for 2015. On the other hand, if you like people in 2016, then you kind of want to try to get those as well. What's your view on that?
Personally, I'm never a big fan of trading future picks for current picks because you're always going to lose value. Like if you were trading 2015 picks for picks in this last draft, you were losing a lot of value. And I think it's consistently going to stay that way. And it's going to end up costing you in the long run. As for trading 2015 picks for 2016 picks, I haven't given the 2016 draft a bunch of time because I'm still trying to get a good grasp on the 2015 draft. I want to give that my focus so I can be as informed as I can about as many of those players and get my gems in the third round and fourth round. But there are a couple of wide receivers in that class I'm looking at. There's Devin Allen out of Oregon that I like. There's Tyler Boyd out of Pitt. I also like Marquez North out of Tennessee.
But I do agree. I do agree with you. Yeah, we should probably be focused on this current draft. What I'm saying is, trading around, especially involving 2016 picks, making sure you're trading them with some kind of knowledge of what's going to be there. Don't just be trading just to trade. Make sure you're actually making a good, wise decision. Make sure you know what you're getting into. Look into the 2016 draft class before you actually get into the 26 draft picks that you own.
Absolutely. I completely agree.
You're not going to want to own like 20 shares of 2016 picks and have an awful class. But on the other hand, if the 2016 class is going to be awesome for you, then you might want to own those 20 picks. But it really comes about making sure you're making these wise decisions. You really want those future draft picks now if it's going to be a bad class. But if it's going to be a great class, you do. But you kind of have to have that knowledge beforehand before you actually make those decisions.
I agree.
A lot of times with fantasy, you want to make those wise. You want to be informed about those decisions. You don't want to just make those decisions without actually looking into it. Because in the end, if you don't look into it, it can bite you in the butt. Because you might get 20 picks and that might be worth nothing.
Right, and I completely agree with that. But I also don't want to be trading for 2015 picks, right now and not know what they're worth either. So.
Yeah.
I agree. It's just it's all a time constraint thing. Is researching as much as you can with the time that you have. But I do need to take some time and try and look into this 2016 class more. There's not a bunch of running backs I was really impressed with from what I've looked into. Granted, there's still 2015 running backs that I haven't spent much time looking into, so. Maybe come February, March, I'll have better answers for you.
Yeah, because you do want to focus on the now, but if you are starting to trade into those 2016s, you kind of want to know what you're getting into. If you have a slight inkling, that's better than no inkling.
I'm always open to trade for future picks, even if the draft ends up being not so great. There will be somebody who thinks that draft's pretty great, and I can unload my picks on them.
Yeah.
So I'm always open to pick up some future first if it comes down to it.
Yeah.
But I do agree. It's good to be knowledgeable about future drafts. I know last year, people were already looking forward to Gurley and Cooper and Gordon. But there's also sometimes that there's no way to predict. Nobody knew that Corey White was going to come out and look as good as he did. So sometimes stuff like that there's no way to predict it happening.
Of course.
So.
Anyways, moving on to your next slide here. About withdrawing from leagues and what's the best way to go about it?
Yeah, this is something that I dealt with this offseason. I withdrew from my two last redraft leagues I was in. Um, they were both keeper leagues, so this was kind of a recurring league, obviously. And I went ahead and I let them know, hey, I'm not going to be back next season. I wanted to let you all know early. This way, it gave them the opportunity to find a replacement owner early before these leagues fill up all the way, and it also gives them a chance to get an owner in there before the season's over and let them do whatever they want on the waiver wire and kind of put their fingerprints on the team. And I also withdrew from a dynasty team, but that one had more to do with a commissioner that didn't really pay attention to the league, and it was just a poorly run league. We had a owner drop out of the league before the season started. Then the team didn't get replaced still. So, I mean, I let him know that I wasn't coming back, but, I did it politely. I didn't, blow up the team, anything like that. But, and it's okay to leave your dynasty league, but don't destroy your team. Don't destroy the league in the process. And I wanted to know if you had, a differing viewpoint or just something to add to that.
I think the fair answer is leave in good terms. Just make sure you're not destroying the league in the process, unless the league was already in destruct mode to begin with. But it's just a polite way. Just let them know that you're not returning, and that way they could actually find the new owner, and that way you're not really leaving the next owner with a piece of crap.
Right. And I think the one other important thing is let the league know you're leaving. Don't just stop logging in. That way they're not like trying to email you and find out what's going on, and it's, a week before the draft and they're trying to find a new owner.
If you don't
that's a pain in the ass.
Even if it's mid-season, let them know that way. Even if it's the mid-season you don't like the league, just let them know, and that way they can find a new owner to take over for you. There's plenty of owners in a dynasty that would not mind taking over a team at any point of the season, whether it be mid-season or mid-off-season. Just let the league know that way they have a better league in the long run.
Right. And when we've had posts on the subreddit about, hey, I just don't like my league. My league mates are, they're shitheads and I don't like them and they suck. That's fine too. Doesn't mean you have to go out, trying to carpet bomb the place. Just, tell them, hey, I'm out, deuces, and leave. Go find a new league. Go find a league with better league mates. Form the league on the subreddit where there are a bunch of awesome guys and girls, and form a league. The Dynasty subreddit money league that formed this year, and that's my favorite league already that I'm in. I'm not lying. I have by far the best conversations having to do with Dynasty football in there. I go there to bounce off my ideas about, Dynasty football. I go there to make sure my, opinions and my thoughts aren't just way out in left field. I go there to get second opinions on trades, and it's by far the most well-informed group of league members I've ever had. And I think that's kind of much more the standard that you're going to meet in the subreddit than you will just random group of people that you get in any Dynasty league.
Sometimes you might be in a league that just doesn't suit you, but that league might actually suit someone else. You never know. It just might different personalities mend together differently.
Right, absolutely.
So if you don't like a league, just open that spot for someone else that could take that spot.
Right. Some leagues like kickers, and screw those leagues. Obviously, I'm kidding, kinda. I hate kickers, but I'm still in some leagues with them just because I like those leagues, and yeah. I'm still going to propose every offseason that we remove kickers, and eventually the votes will go my way.
Hopefully.
I'm not kidding. I'm in a league that I've 3 years in a row I've already proposed that we get rid of kickers.
Yeah.
It'll happen eventually.
Eventually, eventually people will get tied up, bored with their kickers.
Or
Anyways,
they'll just
moving
get
on
tired of
to
me proposing it every year.
this next segment's more into your realm of thing. Drew's round of the week.
It is time for my party. Alright, this does not so much have to do with Dynasty football as it does have to do with Dynasty Fantasy Football's subreddit. Alright, more and more I'm seeing people just going in and downvoting people's opinions. I know we're on Reddit and it's, technically the Reddit says don't do that. And I know everybody does it anyways. But we're a fairly small community. And by fairly small, I mean we're pretty damn small. Small enough to where I feel like, we can actually, abide by the Reddit. You don't have to downvote somebody. Why not just reply and, have a conversation, have a discussion why you disagree with them? I feel like not only will it improve...
Hold on, Drew. When you say have a discussion, I want to make sure that they're having constructive discussion.
Yeah, don't just be an asshole.
Exactly.
Yeah, not just go... I mean, I've seen some abrasive comments, like people ask questions or for opinions, and somebody just replies with, "Are you stupid?" No. No.
You idiot.
No.
You idiot. You dumb.
That's not constructive. If you wouldn't say it to your wife or husband, or for some of you younger ones, your parents, you don't say it on the subreddit. It's not polite. Have a constructive conversation. Don't just downvote and leave. If you disagree, tell them why. Have a discussion. Further the activity in the subreddit.
I disagree, and I think McCoy's going to have a wonderful bounce back year just because his offensive line was decimated this year. Put some insight into your discussion. Just don't say, "Oh, you suck, that's a dumb idea." Why is it a dumb idea? Why do you think that? Explain it. A downvote doesn't explain anything. It doesn't add anything to the discussion. All it does is just lower scores and basically just makes everything look like people don't like any of the discussion on our board, which I hope that's not the case. I hope you guys like the discussion that's going on. Just make sure you're actually discussing things. Open the course of discussion. Upvote. Start upvoting. That way the downvotes don't look as bad. Just start upvoting as well.
I mean, I really don't care about the fake internet points so much as this clearly means that someone disagrees with your opinion, but they're not taking the time to say why they disagree with your opinion.
Or Drew, it could just be someone just downvoting for the sake of it, just to troll.
Oh, well, then stop being a butthole. I mean, seriously, don't be a butthole. I mean...
Ooh, I can hit down vote buttons. Woo! I'm so special! Woo!
I feel like this is devolved into way less serious than I had originally intended it to be. All I'm saying is, if you disagree with somebody, just have a discussion about it. Like there was a post. There's lots of posts. I don't remember where I was going with that. But it seems like every day I see at least one post where there's two contradictory opinions, and one post gets downvoted, and one post gets upvoted. Like, just why not those two guys have a conversation about why they disagree? No, maybe.
This is fantasy football. There's a lot of differing opinions.
Yeah, not everybody's right.
Nope. If everyone was right, then
everybody would win the championship every year. This was one of my weirder rants. I still don't know if it beats when I got angry over Martavis Bryant, though. I feel like that was a good one. My wife still gives me crap about that one.
Martavis Bryant, is that how you pronounce the name?
I will come to your house and I will poop in your driveway if you keep saying it like that.
Martavis Bryant?
El Smacko.
Anyways, I think that's it for the podcast for the year. We'll probably see you next year. Well, not next football season, but in January sometime.
Yep,
We're
we will
not gonna
be
have one.
taking next week off.
We're taking the next week off for the Christmas break, but we
Yep.
will be back hopefully the week after that with hopefully more material.
Yep. As the regular season winds down, that means we'll have more time to focus on, the draft season coming up, the off season coming up. That means the party's really getting started because that's when Dynasty time kicks off. So I hope you all are ready for some more fun. I hope you stick with us through the off season. That's all we have for this week. If you got any parting shots for us, Dave?
Nope, I think that's it. I think we nailed it right in the head this week. I think hopefully.
All right, we got them. All right, this has been the Dynasty Playbook, Dynasty FF's dedicated podcast. I've been your host, Drew. You can find me on Reddit at EAF_Marine and on Twitter at DrewDotsonNFL. And with me, as always, is my co-host, Dave. You can find Dave on Reddit at MTux96 and on Twitter at DynastyDaveII. Thanks for having us, and y'all have a Merry Christmas and a Happy Hanukkah and a Happy Holidays.
And happy Kwanzaa too for those people that do Kwanzaa.
That's right.
Happy holidays. That covers everything. Happy holidays.
That's why I said it. Dave.
Have a great day.